All right, so this story really kind of affected me, not only because it's affected my life and certainly people around me. It just sucks. And a famous celebrity, it really does. A famous celebrity came out and said, really? People are still dying from heroin overdoses? Isn't it 2021? What are we doing here?
Somebody said that?
Yeah. I mean, it was an RIP. It was a friend of his, and he was like, he's like, damn, I am just distraught.
Yeah.
He goes, but we're still overdosing on heroin. What's going on here? A couple of days ago, a gal named Kate Quigley, who is a famous comedian, she was dating Darius Rucker. She lives in Venice. She got a hold of some bad coke that was laced with fentanyl. Fortunately, she didn't do enough of it that it killed her, but it did kill 3 of her comedian friends.
I had no idea.
Venice Beach, California. And it didn't take much, and so she's like, I'm okay, I'm fine, but and that's basically all she said. So it was really, really unfortunate, and she was really well known in the California area. Then Michael K. Williams, who I really didn't know. If you told me his name, I'd go, I don't know who that is.
Until you saw him.
Until I saw him, I was like, I know this guy. He is a 5-time Emmy Award-winning nominee, was in this thing called The Wire, which ironically enough, he played Omar Little, who was a drug dealer in the show. And he even said in his last Instagram post, he said, it was really great for me because it is well known that he was rehabilitating and recovering from his own drug addictions, and that he said there was a real gray area there. It's kind of like, a sex addict playing a sex addict in a movie and having to, because a lot of guys want to, what do they call that when they actually play the part? They learn the part, and they're method actors.
Yes.
He'd gone through the whole method thing and the dealing and all this stuff, and it just was too much for, obviously, from a trigger standpoint. Yeah. And so they found him yesterday afternoon at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in his Beverly Hills apartment around a table full of heroin, and he's dead. He was also in Lovecraft Country on HBO. He was also on Boardwalk Empire, which is a great show. And I'm just like, he's 54 years old, and again, this is another one of those guys where, you're only going to hear great things about him right now, but evidently everyone that knew him, big heart, would give you anything, super nice guy, always had time for you, never took the craft or his gift for granted. And just really enjoyed it. And he was just one of those humble kind of guys. When you see him in interviews, he's like, I can't believe I got this part.
Yeah.
And he was like, he played with some big celebrities. Anyway, and it obviously was not a suicide. It was an overdose in this particular case. But it's like, man. Yeah. And that just goes to show you that no matter how big or how famous you are, you can get a hold of some bad stuff. And it's just kind of like, you think about the guys on the streets, and the people that just can't fight this addiction, whatever the addiction is. Alcohol is a little different because you're buying it from stores, and for the most part, you're not going to die unless you just have too much of it. In this case, talking illegal stuff and this fentanyl, it's just like, And it's funny because I remember back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and when I used, you get lousy stuff. This stuff sucks. This is terrible. And now...
Well, terrible's
that's
dead.
Not...
Right.
Now, good is dead.
Right.
Be careful what you wish for. It used to be, I don't know, I was watching some cocaine show on the Discovery Channel where it used to be like 15% pure. Now it's like 80-something% pure, and you don't even know what it's laced with. It's real unfortunate. I don't know if you've had anything to say about it. You're a psychologist.
No, it's a great...
It just bums me out because we've seen it over and over and over again. And Michael K. Williams, again, wasn't one of these guys where he was like a Justin Bieber or someone that we'll remember for years. But we will certainly remember him over the next few days and what his contributions were to cinema and everything else he did. But it's unfortunate. It's really sad.
No, I mean, like you said, this is one that we didn't know. Chris Cornell, another one.
Mm-hmm.
But like I was thinking the Demi Lovato story, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's much more public. You have no idea at any point what most people are dealing with unless it's so, even if it's so bad, unless they're showing you. Yeah. And I always say to people, some of the most disturbed, crazy, distressed, crazy I'm saying in a sympathetic way, people I've ever seen, they look like you and I.
Yeah.
Like they hold themselves together, maybe like this guy, like is able to do his stuff. Again, I think of like the Whitney Houstons, where we sort of publicly we saw her going downhill, and we see this in our workplace. I mean, we see. I end up talking a lot about this. We see people that we work with, or maybe we know them from church, or our family members, and like when they go from fine to kind of not quite okay, we tend to write it off.
Yep.
They're having a bad week. They're having a bad month.
Absolutely.
Because they're not, they're not coming in coked out of their mind, falling over drunk. But I always tell people when somebody doesn't seem quite right, give it a day, give it a week. Because people kind of rebound in a week, and it's just something a little off. We're all a little
They're not
off.
responding like they normally do.
Yes,
they're just acting a little off.
It's this much off.
Yeah.
When it's this much off, and your radar goes up, and listen, our radars go up, but a lot of times, and I understand this, we don't really want to say anything because we don't know what to say, because it's not so, if somebody's at work with their head down, or they can't keep their head up, or they're fine. But if they just seem a little off, we don't know what to say. It is so much better to check in and say to somebody, "You okay? You seem a little off." And a lot of times people say, "No, I'm fine. That's okay. I noticed."
Mm-hmm.
The reason that's important is it can plant a seed in somebody's head that two things. One, somebody noticed, and particularly if you say, "Look, I just noticed. If anything's ever bothering me, I'm here.
Yep.
I'm here."
Yep.
So it plants the seed and it opens the door, and then you don't have to do anything else. But you hear these tragic tales and it always comes around on the backside. They seemed a little off.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like things weren't quite right. They missed a few days of work.
Yep.
You know this from rehabilitation, from
Yep.
addiction.
Mm-hmm.
They missed a few days of work, and then they came back and they were fine. And then they missed a few days again.
Yep. Yeah, it's for me, it's consistency.
Yes.
There's nothing. I can only think about 2 or 3 different people. You're a very consistent individual, and I know that when you're non-existent, something's going on, and you're a big boy. You can handle it yourself. You're a psychologist.
Well,
and I'm the same way. But I mean, when someone just doesn't, when someone's super consistent, there's not a lot of people that are consistently always on. They're always on because you're not around them all the time. Maybe you have a meeting with them every day, and they're always on. And you're like, he's always on, dude. He's always in a good mood. You don't see them the rest of the time. Now, if you're married to that person or you're living with that person, you don't see the inconsistencies. But yeah, if you're friends with somebody over a long period of time, I had a phone call with a friend of mine yesterday that I hadn't heard from a long time. I used to hear from every 2 or 3 days. And I just called up and said, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, and he had some stuff going on. Nothing this deep.
Yep.
But just had a lot of stuff going on. I'm sorry. I said, "No, it's cool. I'm just calling to check in." But consistency is one of those things you want to go through. And again, the list is crazy. We go through Art Bell, of course, was an American broadcaster, had issues. Tom Petty, Prince, China, Scott Whalen from SDP. Philip Seymour Hoffman was one of those guys where everyone knew his name and everyone knew his movies. He wasn't the A-list guy.
Right.
I'm sure there was a couple movies where he was the A actor. But again, one of those things where you're like, Joan Rivers was another person. These are people that evidently they overdosed, but some of them lived, obviously.
Oh, these are all people who've overdosed?
Yeah. Amy Winehouse was another one. Michael Jackson, Billy Mays, Heath Ledger, Ike Turner, John Entwistle from The Who was another. Chris Farley. The Chris Farley story, by the way, was just
Belushi?
Heartbreaking. John Belushi was another. Kurt Cobain, River Phoenix. We can go on and on and on.
And these are people, let's be
Len
clear.
Bias, I mean, was huge.
Right, these are people who overdosed.
Yeah.
Right? So these are not people with addiction. Only this is that next.
Well, and that's the other common misnomer is that you must be an addict if you overdose. And that's not true.
No, you could be not. You can
now,
be
there's
naive.
a much better shot that you're going to overdose if you are an addict.
Well, but except we talked about
because you need more and more and more.
But except we talked about with the cocaine laced with fentanyl.
Yeah. And I don't know if they used every day. I don't know if they used every week. I don't know if this was just a whim. Janis Joplin, Judy Garland, Jimi Hendrix, Brian Jones, Brian Epstein, Lenny Bruce, Marilyn Monroe. I mean, Hank Williams Sr., Tommy Dorsey, Sigmund Freud.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. That was the whole cocaine.
Was it a mushroom thing?
No, cocaine.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Cocaine used to be, they used to think it was therapy. It was used for sort of therapeutic purposes.
And it still can be used therapeutically.
Yeah, not this way. Well,
if your doctor is prescribing you cocaine for your problems,
it's just it is. We are very judgy. We are very judgy.
Very judgy.
We're very judgy, and when we're judgy, not just on addiction stuff. Although I've seen it, you've seen this too, particularly when it's a friend or family member who you never would have thought.
Yeah.
We get super judgy real quick. First, we get concerned. There's concern, and then there's you need to stop. Stop it.
Yeah.
Look what you're doing. We go and somehow you see the same thing in depression, but it's a little different. So depression, I think we've learned enough, and you'd think we'd learn this with addiction, but with depression, we've learned enough that when we tell people, oh, come, cheer up, buck up, and when they're really depressed, I think lots of people know enough now to go, okay, I've told them to cheer up 16 times and they can't get out of bed.
Yep.
But with addiction, it just seems so different. It's we know more about it. It's more commonplace. But it's that, would you just stop? Look what you're doing to your life.
Yep.
Just stop. And whereas with, again, depression is you need to go get help. And we don't want you to kill yourself, right? So you think about depression, and it's always like if you check down the list in depression, and this goes with suicide prevention. We don't want you to be depressed. We don't want we want you to be able to get out of bed and stuff. But the fear that a lot of people have when they know about depression is they'll kill themselves.
Yeah,
they'll actively kill themselves. Whereas with addiction, it's you're ruining your life.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean, the overdose piece, you think about it, but it's more of this, you think about it as a slow slide. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Look what you're doing. You just got hospitalized. Stop. Demi Lovato, great example. You had a stroke. Stop it.
Yep.
Whereas depression, I think, is just, we're so worried that you're going to cut yourself, shoot yourself, OD, whatever.
Well, and unfortunately, too, there's such a stigmatism that goes along with it, because now if Demi Lovato ever acts weird.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Or she's a little off. Because addicts are the best liars, and to themselves they lie the most. So yeah, it's usually something where you were a little crazy last night, or ooh, that was fun, but it depends on it, because it's usually something that creeps into your life, and like I always mention, the alligator by the lake, it pulls you in. Next thing you know, you don't realize you're being pulled in.
So, but think about that. Think about the stigma you just said. That's really interesting. So,
and there's a whole thing going on now. The government's running these commercials. Don't judge. Help kind of thing. So continue.
No, I was just going to say, think about it. And this goes with any.
And I don't know if Michael Williams could have been. I don't know if he was an addict. I don't know. I don't know.
He died of an overdose. That's all we know.
He died of an overdose. He had a pile of heroin in his apartment.
Right. So it could have been anything.
We can make all these.
Think about this though. If you come out and you say, I have a psychological disorder, I have a psychiatric disorder, and some of this, I'm going to say this again, some of this is, and it's moving in the right direction because it is generational. But you say that, and you say you're depressed, you have an anxiety disorder, but it's well managed. People didn't know. Oh yeah, I suffered from depression. It's well managed. I take medications. I'm in therapy. So instantly, addiction, the same thing. I'm sober now. I go to meetings and I do my thing, and it's all good. And you look at the person, and you're instantly going, ooh, like it's not a, but you go, whoa, because I would have never known. Now, somebody said I'm diabetic, right? I have diabetes. You might initially go, oh, I had no idea. Okay, now you got the depression, the anxiety, the thing, and you're acting just slightly off at work.
Yep.
There is so much more of I wonder if they relapsed. I wonder if they're having things. Whereas a diabetic, you could also be acting a little strange at work because, are you okay? Is your blood sugars okay? And there's much more compassion. I'm not saying that people are mean, but it's mental healthy things scare the bejesus out of all of us.
Sure they do.
Much more so. And yet, if you're diabetic and your blood sugars are off, dude, you could.
It's the same thing.
Well, yeah,
well, they're both diseases.
Yeah.
They're diseases. Whether you want to, just say no. You can't. It's a disease.
They're conditions, and when you say disease, because it's the same. They are conditions.
Yep.
I think one of the things that is so great, and this may scare you a little bit, but your kid's a little young. Talk to college kids. It used to be YouTube. Now they learn everything on TikTok. They learn everything on TikTok. And one of the things that I've noticed about the 22, 23, 24, let's say 30 and down, mental health diagnoses, even if you're judgy about it, it is to say it. He's depressed, she's depressed, he's got an eating disorder, she's got an eating disorder. It's no big deal. I mean, it's no big deal to talk about it. Now, they still may judge, etc. That's the good news. I think that's a huge step in the right direction, because our generation was all about, addiction was always the one that was okay.
Yep.
But a lot of people run around and they don't have addictions. And in fact, a lot of times we see overdoses and subsequent use and addiction. What comes before it is typically anxiety.
Yep.
Right. And we talk about, a lot of times people become addicted because they don't know how to cope with the stresses of their lives.
And I'll say something about this stigmatism too, because whenever you do get around a recovering alcoholic or a recovering addict, you want to know how much time it is. I forget who it was that came out the other. John Legend's wife.
Yes.
She just came out over the weekend, said she's been sober for 50 days. And of course, everyone's like, way to go, that's great. And she's like, I didn't like who I was, and I couldn't enjoy the party anymore, and blah, 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 blah. And that's great. That's super.
Yeah.
As a person who's gone through that process, I'm like, get some more time under your belt. Because 90 days is certainly a benchmark point. That's where all your receptors.
Was it publicly known that she was?
I don't know. I think it was based off her texts and tweets about the suicide, go kill yourself, and I hope you die soon, blah, 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 blah. And I think she was just trying to clean up some parts of her life.
Got it. Yep.
And we see that a lot with celebrities. And that's great. That's super. You look at someone like Anthony Hopkins, who's a raging alcoholic and addict, has been sober now for 20-something years or whatever, and that's super. The thing is that the stigmatism that sticks to a lot of people is, if you are a former, or I say former, you're an addict, a recovering addict, and you've been sober for years, they always think that you're one bad moment away from jumping off and relapsing, and it's not true. It's not true. If you're working the program and you're part of it and you're passing it forward, you're just as healthy as anyone that has never been an addict or never even drank. You recoil from the fire. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. There are people that are sober for 20 years that fall off. They do relapse, and that's part of it's like giving up cigarettes. Cold turkey don't work. It takes the average smoker 9 times to finally kick the habit of smoking. I'm dipping right now, and it's something I'm working on too. So that's one of those things where it takes 9 times. The stock market never goes like this. It goes like this.
Yes.
It goes up and down, and it's part of the process. We don't want to admit that because we don't want to relapse, and we don't want to fall back into that, because when you do relapse, it comes back twice as bad as you had the first time. But there is that sense of, don't piss him off, or I hope he doesn't have a bad day, and that's just not true. There's a stigmatism that a lot of people don't realize. That's why programs like Al-Anon and stuff are super important for partners or for mates or for family members who are with that, because it is a family disease.
Well, because listen, you can talk about the disease process, and you can talk about the sort of the addictive properties. But when you do something, we always talk, psychologists talk about this, there's the two pieces. There's the it's in your system thing, but then there is the psychological behavior. It's the habit thing. So and I try to say this to people. Think about somebody who has been trying to stay away from certain fat foods. Mm-hmm. Right? And the more we study obesity, oh my God! I mean, it's the same. We believe there's an obesity gene.
Yep.
It's sort of the same gene that is the addictive gene. But if you think about it, and I always think this is important. Like, dial this back to your life. Mm-hmm. You've been on an exercise program. You've been trying to communicate better with your spouse. You've been trying to be more patient with your kids. You've been trying to eat better. Whatever it is. And you did it for a week, and you did it for 2 weeks. You're at a month now. Mm-hmm. You're at 30 days. I've been on my diet, I'm exercising, and then and people are like, okay, keep the cake away from him. Don't let him see the cake. We're going out to dessert. Oh, dessert. It's exactly the same thing. And that person very often is in the position where they do have a lapse.
Yeah.
They have a lapse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in that moment that their support system, their own psychological tools are going to determine whether they fall off the proverbial wagon. And the reason I think that's important is it happens on not just much more serious behaviors like addiction. It happens on everything.
Yeah.
Consistency, time, because there's the habit component.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, habits work the same way that the stock market does. They go like this.
Mm-hmm.
They go like this. Now the difference is, if I fall off on an exercise program, chances are, if I miss a week or a month, I'm not going to die.
There is something to be said about how far you fall off.
Yes,
because
a
lot
point.
of people think, well, if I'm on we've done it a million times. You're on a diet, screw it, and you get the tub of ice cream and you eat the whole damn thing.
Right.
Are you going to blow because I've screwed up, so I might as well blow the doors off. That's where the overdoses come from, and it's unfortunate because in like a lot of cases, and I've heard it a million times. When people do relapse, well, I've relapsed. We might as well make a party out of it. Let's go. Well, and it takes it to an all
binge eating
level.
is the same thing.
Yeah.
Binge eating and binge drinking. I've relapsed. Damn it, I hate myself.
People do it every Friday.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, I used to do remotes and stand by the side of streets. I couldn't tell you how many people had 6 packs of beers and they're drinking beer on the way home. I hadn't drank all week. It's Friday. I'm getting after it.
Yeah.
I mean, they couldn't wait till they got to the house and they're drinking, anyway. It's unfortunate. And again, a lot of people in and around his family and his friends are like, damn, I should have seen this, or I could have done more, or could I have seen what he was going through. Sometimes you don't, sometimes you do. And again, we always think that celebrities and these people have life so good. Why would they do this to themselves? He didn't want to die. But what could I have done? And you know this firsthand too, because you've done a lot of people and people that are close to you. Sometimes you do everything you possibly can do, and sometimes it's just got to work its way out.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate because, and this is a perfect time to tell you about the Jimmy Hale mission.
Yes. Because
90% of people that are homeless have some type of addictive property. In most cases, they're loved by their families. They're very capable of being community members and giving back to the community and using the gifts that God has given them to coexist with all of us. They just can't seem to get it together, and the demons have just got them to the point where they just can't. They figure they need help, and they don't want to ask for it, but they get it. And you get it through the Jimmy Hale mission. They're going to help you vocationally, mentally, physically, spiritually. They do it all. Michael Coleman, who's a good friend of mine, took over the Jimmy Hale mission a couple of years ago. They've been around for 77 years, something like that. I've been working with them for 30 years. They do great work. But if you're all in and you want to get back out in the community, you want to get your GED or college degree, you want to get back with your family. A lot of cases, you see someone that's an addict or homeless, they've got family members that live in town.
Oh, yeah.
They're just over it.
Yeah. Well, they don't know what to do with them.
They don't know what to do anymore. And they okay, here we go again, and give it your best shot, and then 2 weeks later, and it's really unfortunate. But the Jimmy Hale mission can help. Jimmy Hale mission, Jimmy with IE, JimmyHaleMission.org, JimmyHaleMission.com. And if you go to our website, KCastRadio.com, it's KCastRadio.com. There's a donation button. You can punch that bad boy. $5 a week will change the life of a woman, man, or a child. They're a non-for-profit, obviously, and they will help you out. You could also listen to KCast Radio on the KCast Radio app. We're being on Facebook Live right now, and, of course, on the KCast Radio's app as well. It's a 2 for Tuesday.